Hi everybody. Usually these are pretty much just me talking since many of you are doing your work hours and everything, but I try to choose a time that is best for me to give 30 minutes of my time here in my office, also my kids' playroom. And because that's just how life is, and all of us have kids usually with us or some way while we're trying to do other things, right? Today we are specifically talking in these workshops, which these workshops are held every single month, and they are intended to offer free information that is not easy to obtain in the form of Instagram or social media or a blog post. And it's also to give you some of the highlights of what we're discussing in our online community. Our online community is designed to be a deeper dive for those of us that are looking for a lot more learning materials that are concise, straightforward, focused on, really catering your learning about gardening, and then connecting with me more directly and our over 200 plus members. So it is a great place if you're interested in the email that you will receive today with the replay and other information. You'll receive a discount code for 1 free month in the community if you want to check it out. It's a total of 3 months that you get, but you only pay for 2 months instead of all three. So you'll get that as an option if you want to jump in and take some of our free courses. Or courses that are included. When you become a member, you get an all access pass. So everything you see when you go to community.freshexchange.com, it all becomes unlocked. So you can get all the courses, everything you want at your disposal. So this is just sort of like a little bit of what we'll be talking about this month. We have a whole course on soil, and it just went live, and you can go, it's part of your membership when you become a member. So at any time, my golden retriever is coming to visit today, you can join. And so, like I said, you will get one month free out of, or 1 month free out of three. Gosh, that's a tongue twister. And you can check it out. So it will come in your email after this. And say hello to Nellie. She's deaf. So she's my 14-year-old golden retriever. But today we are going to be talking about the best way to amend your soil. I find that this can be quite complicated for a lot of people, and I want to say that this is really applicable to people who are growing straight in the ground, whether that's just a flower bed that you want to do, or maybe you want to grow your vegetables in the ground, or you simply have existing raised beds and you want to understand how to amend them. Maybe you moved into a new space. I am not going to go over soil testing, but I have I have a podcast coming out this month about soil testing and when I think it's reasonable to do it and when I don't. At the end of the session, I will leave enough time for a few questions, but if you have any other questions, you're welcome to email me or DM me on Instagram, whatever's easiest for you, and I'd be happy to discuss anything with you. So let's get going. I have a presentation, so I'm going to share it because I think this is the best way to share. I'm going to, sorry, I gotta put in present. Okay, let me just share my screen. Okay, and we're gonna present. Okay, so the best way to amend soil is honestly way simpler, but I'm gonna go through the three soil types. These are the three main soil types. There's also silt, which is another one, but I find that these are the three that most people should understand, and you're probably most likely to come across. So there's sandy, which is sand basically mixed with what you could call topsoil. It is very drainage heavy. Everything just runs through it. The nutrient capacity is like 0 to none. And then the next one would be loam, which is what we really want. This is going to be nutrient rich, and it is going to be, it's going to hold moisture well, but also drain well. It should be the perfect balance of everything. And this is what we're really trying to achieve. And then clay. Clay is going to be very dense, heavy. There's not going to be much space between. And so it makes it really hard for the water to drain, which can lead to rotting in your plants. It can lead to a lot of issues. But great thing about clay soil is it's usually really nutrient dense, but the problem is our plants cannot access the water properly to uptake the nutrients. So we have to amend it, right? So that it's closer to loam. So we're going to learn how to do that today. So here we go. Determining your type. How do you do it? Do you need a soil test? Technically, no. I have the belief that for home gardeners, most of us don't need a soil test. It usually, I go through it really intensely in the online community, and I talk about it some in the upcoming podcast. So I will link to the podcast and I will link to the soil course for you guys. But basically, all you need to do is use your hands. Most things in the garden can be determined by ourselves. We don't need something fancy to tell us what is going on. We just have to pay attention, right? So sand is not going to clump together. It's going to go through your fingers. It's not going to have, you'll see a lot more pebbles. It's going to be kind of coarse. It's just, and you'll also notice if you put water through it, it just like dissipates. Doesn't stay. You kind of get it. It's like sand, right? And then loam is going to be nice. It's going to stick together, but also be easy to like break apart when you do this. It should just kind of fall through your hands. You're also and should see plenty of worms. Worms are a really good sign that your soil is healthy. It should be your goal to be able to pick soil up or move soil aside and see at least one worm. So if you're not seeing worms, there's definitely an issue with your soil. And we're going to talk about how to fix that. Then with clay, just like clay, you would clump it together. Does it stay together? What happens? This is what you're going to need to focus on so that you can understand what kind of soil you have. It's pretty simple in that regard. Okay, so how do you amend? This is my garden that I grow directly in the soil. We utilize native soil. We tilled it one time, and then after that, we've only used this amendment process. There's definitely varying types of amendment or ways to go about amending your soil in terms of different methods. You probably heard of them. There's the no-till, the native soil, and then there's tilling. I chose the native soil method, but I have also used in some of my perennial beds and native plant beds, I have used the no-till method. So this one tilling was really intended to basically open up the soil to pull out all the rocks. We had very sandy, gravelly soil and tons of heavy rocks. We had to remove all of that in order to create a space that was going to be conducive to growing things like carrots and tomatoes that need to drive deep roots, and those rocks would have stood in the way. The other reason was we had a very expansive amount of quackgrass that is very challenging to remove because it's all rhizomes, and so you have to like pull it all out and break it all up and rake it out in order to really remove it well. We will always fight it. It is terrible stuff, but this helped us give us a leg up to build healthy soil really easily. We've never tilled it since. And I can tell you that soil is amazing now after 3 years of not tilling it. And I don't suggest tilling it other than one time. That's the most amount you should ever need to do. Tilling can cause a higher amount of weeds. It can damage the soil health, the microbes, worms, all the things that we need there. So I don't suggest that. I also strongly believe in the no-till method and the no-dig method, as Charles Dowding calls it. Love Charles, he's amazing. So I really suggest looking into both of these and going with what feels right. I think every single person's soil is different, just like every human's different. So I think you got to take the approach that feels right to you. So how do we amend? So sand, you want to add a mix of screen topsoil and compost. So the topsoil is that information, the basic information that your soil needs, and then the compost is going to add the intense amount of organic matter that it needs to add that structure and bring it closer to loam. We're going to want to broad fork or rake this in. You don't have to till it in, okay? You can layer it on top, scratch it into that surface, or just put the broad fork in and bend it back, forward, and you're done. And then rake it to even it out. That's it. If we have loam, we don't really need to do anything. Every single growing season, add 1 to 2 inches of fresh compost on top of your soil. I really suggest with loam varying the type of compost you use. So maybe one year you're using, we're gonna go through different types really quick, but you could use like worm castings predominantly, or composted chicken manure another year. You could use hummus style, that is basically like all plant matter. Mixing it up is like sort of like thinking about your biome in your stomach. We want to be feeding different things into our biome. We want to be doing the same thing in our soil. It works sort of similarly, where we can create a strong biome by adding varying types of material into it, right? So clay, we need to add a mix of compost and sand. So sand helps with that aeration of the soil and opening and space, where the compost adds the organic matter. And then we want to broad fork this in. There's no way you're going to get this raked in, so you have to broad fork. And that's going to be the best way. And then lastly, you will just allow the rain, or you can water it afterwards in any one of these situations. This will help add it into the soil deeper and get it down in there the way we want it to. Okay, so why compost? Compost is talked about so much. We see so much in the gardening world about compost. Now, compost is truly the secret to great soil. It gives everything we truly need in a lot of ways. We do continue doing some fertilizing, but we can do less fertilizing and we can use organic types. Next month, I have a workshop on fertilizing, so I highly suggest that one. It's free. You can sign up for that one. It's at the end. I'll show you the same way you sign up for this one, you sign up for that one. So, but compost improves the structure of the soil and health of microbes by adding a necessary amount of organic matter. So all of that stuff that you degrade down, whether you make your own compost or you purchase it, we're going to talk about that, doesn't matter. Like, that is all organic matter that needs to be added into the soil. Nature gives us this tool. We need to use it. This basically helps soil retain moisture better. It also allows for nutrients to be easier to uptake by the plants because the moisture is consistent and healthy for them. And it adds to the feeding of that biome within the soil of microbes that we need to have healthy plants as well. And it also allows them to communicate better with one another. So this ultimately obviously reduces that need for pesticides and chemical fertilizers. We don't need them when we utilize compost appropriately. So how do you actually choose compost? It's not all created equal. I will say that. It is not a simple thing to understand. And I think it's incredibly complicated for most home gardeners, and it really disappoints me because it doesn't need to be. There are some simple standards to go with. First of all, the best compost is usually going to typically be the one you're making at home, whether it's with vermiculture, which is using a worm farm, which is a really great way, no matter the size of your space you're in. It's really great. There's a lot of really good small kitchen composters now that are really great. I would suggest looking into that if you have a small space, but if you have a larger space in a yard, learn how to compost. It's going to be the most powerful thing that you can utilize in your garden, and it will save you money ultimately. This is why I have chickens, truly. Not for the eggs, it's for them helping keeping my compost hot. So it's so helpful. And if you have animals like chickens, I highly suggest utilizing them in your garden at the end of the season. They will add in essential nutrients, and it's a regenerative process that is such a gift from nature, okay? It will save you tons of money in your gardening adventures. But one of the things, if we're looking at buying compost, that we need to consider is we need to look for OMRI certification. Why this? We don't want biosolids. Mainly, this is a way for us to avoid biosolids, which can just be full of PFAS and salts and all sorts of things we don't want in our soil, right? And so this certification, which you can see down here on this Blue Ribbon Organics bagged compost, that certification is there. This is what we want. And that is the first and foremost thing that if you're buying any bagged compost, you have to look for. It will mean that your compost has been really certified on a scale that is healthy. You can look up and Google what OMR certification truly means. Like, it's a list of things that is pretty shocking that you could find in like big box store compost. It's not all created equal, like I said. I like to personally look local first. Now, you're not going to probably get OMR certification on some local compost. But what I like about this is you can have a literal conversation with the company. So you can say, here's what I want to know. can you tell me what is in your compost? Where do you source it? How do you do this? And it's really incredible. I have found that for us, there's two really incredible sources locally that are done in a way that really is beautiful and incredible in what they're doing. So, and I've made relationships. It's a community-based concept, right? So I can get and source some of the best compost like 20 minutes from my house. And I get to support a local person who is really trying to make a living out of doing something good for the environment. And they're doing it authentically and beautifully, and it's wonderful. It's such a great thing. And I get to learn a lot from them at the same time. So I really suggest digging in and finding, not, it's a joke, but truly like digging to find that person, because there is somebody locally near you that's really important to find. And you don't always want to look at manure. A lot of times we're going to see compost and manure. Not all manure is created equal. Horse manure, llama manure, goat manure, alpacas, amazing. Their poop is gold. Donkey is pretty good too. Then the least of these, or chickens, would be up there too, because they're going to be higher in nitrogen. It just has to be cured long enough. But then the next one down would be, the last one would be cows. Cows are not the manure that we want typically, unless they're being sourced properly. So I definitely suggest looking deeper into that and understanding it if you're using cow manure. It's not that it's terrible, it's just it can be higher in salts and things like that that can throw the pH off. You also don't know what they're being fed. So horses and donkeys and sheep and alpacas are all grazing animals typically, and we're not, usually getting them for food as much, and so they're being utilized in a different way, and so their intake is different than what a cow may be. So it's really important to just understand the sourcing of that manure. That's why local is best. Worm castings are incredibly great compost. You need way less of them, and you can usually amend most of your soil with it, or with like raised beds or something, with just a bag or two. And then organic, is it necessary? I like to, if I'm in a bind and I have to buy something, I always need organic, because you're not going to find, there's no herbicides, pesticides typically that are being used. If they are, they're organic and they're better for the environment overall. There's a lot of debate about this. I think it really depends on what feels good to you and what you find interesting to be adding into your soil and how much you care about it. I see mixed reviews on it. I typically lean organic personally, just because I trust the sourcing a little more, but I think it really depends on what feels right for you. I steer clear of any big box store brands in general, because they're usually never OMR certified. I rarely see it. So if that tells you anything. And then you really want to focus on being peat free. This is an environmental impact reason. Peat in itself is totally fine for your garden, but it's the the excavation of it that is unsustainable and bad for the environment. It is a huge carbon sink, and it is non-renewable. And so it's like pulling stuff out of the rainforest, basically. So we need to not be touching that and leaving it alone. There are so many other options. We do not need peat in our garden as gardeners. It's not necessary. Okay, so how do you actually add this? I kind of mentioned it before, but I think it's important to understand that really this raking situation right here, we're just getting into we want to scratch it in. Think of yourself like a chicken, like you're scratching it into the soil and then leaving it and letting the rain and water do the work. I know that sounds really simple, but it's really true and it really works, and that's all you have to do. When I worked on a farm, this is what we did, and our soil was incredible. We tested it every couple of years, only for the reason of understanding how much organic matter we were pulling out. And it was amazing how this one simple thing could do so much. So you don't have to do more than just like either a broad fork or a rake. That's all you need, okay? No tilling, not necessary. Okay, I'm gonna go off of this, but I want to highlight that our next free workshop is June 9th, same time a day. So, and there will be a replay if you miss it. But I highly suggest signing up. You can just go to community.freshexchange.com and click on the free monthly workshops. You can go there and you can sign up for all of them if you want to. They're all there for the rest of the year. You can see all the different topics. So I'm going to stop sharing. So like I said, we're going to talk about fertilizing, and I'm going to be releasing our fertilizing course next month as well to really simplify the concept of what it is to do organic fertilizing. Okay, I love to answer any questions. You can either turn your camera on and ask, or you can drop it into the chat. I know that was quick, and I'm sure there's plenty of soil questions because it's a big and important thing.
I have a quick question. Hi.
Yes.
I have chickens, but I have not collected their poop for a year and I want to start. Do you have any just tips on how to get started on that
Yeah.
or
So
resources?
do you have them in a run, or do you forage them? Like, how do you?
They forage for an hour, but they're in a run in a coop, so I could collect their poop in the coop.
Yes. So that's what I would do. I would pull it all out of the coop. I think like we do like one cleaning a year from our coop, because we do the deep method or whatever it's called, and we pull it all out.
Mhm.
You can compost all of that bedding actually, and we have bins that we put it in, like composting, just like wild bin. You can Google like compost bins, like DIY, and you could just dump it all in there and let it cure
Okay.
for 6 months. And you can also do the same thing with your run. Like we throw all winter, we throw all our veggie scraps into the the run, and they eat them because it's really hard to compost in the winter here because it's so cold. And so then I just
Yeah.
dig up the floor of the run and dump it into that same area and then just let it sit for a year, and it's amazing.
Oh, okay. So you don't have to move it around or anything like a regular composting. You just
No,
leave it alone.
no,
Oh,
I don't.
sweet. Okay.
It would probably go faster if you turned it, but I don't always think about it, and it still does what it needs to do. It just takes a little longer.
Okay. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
you're so welcome. Alyssa asked, where do you source locally in Traverse City? So Kroll's in Maple City is amazing. He will talk your arm off, but it is expensive, but they do loads in trailers. I would highly suggest that. And then Timothy's Conscious Compost. They've been doing some free pickups at Oriana, and you can and on 10th Street. You can pick some up there. But if you can't, just look Timothy's Conscious Compost up. He's on Facebook, and you can message him, and he has pickups right now from 10 to 2 on Saturdays at his location in Empire. I would highly suggest them. If you can't get one of those and they feel a little pricey, the next one down would be Dairy Do, which they do use compost and manure. Um, Most of the organic local farms, that's what they use. So that would be my third choice. You are welcome. Any other questions? We got 7 minutes here. And there's no,
Can I ask,
oh
oh,
yeah,
sorry, can I ask a question about fruit trees and compost? Like, would you put compost at the base of like a new fruit tree?
if you've already planted it, yes. If you haven't planted it and you're putting it in, put it all around underneath it. And like, I mean, you want like a good amount, like, really fill it because you always want to dig like double the width of that tree, like what you would think you would need. You need to just keep going. Like, I usually do like a 2 foot wide hole around a new tree, and I fill it in with tons of compost and, um, even because we have really sandy soil, I put a little bit of mulch mixed in with it to really help with moisture retention. If you don't have really sandy soil, you don't need to do that. But I would definitely add in compost, and you can even use compost as a mulch, so to speak, over the top. If you've already planted the tree every year, it can be really helpful. You don't have to do anything. You just kind of mulch around it with compost and then let the rain just kind of pour it in there, or your watering system do it. That should do a lot. Yeah. Let's see.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Mercy says, if you don't see worms in your compost, do you add worms in your soil? I just want to make sure I understand.
Yes, sorry. So my soil doesn't have worms, and you said that, so it just like made me think of now what?
So I would definitely be adding more compost because
Okay.
usually it needs more organic matter. There's not enough food for them, so they're not there. And a lot of people think that they need to like rip their plants out every single year. A lot of the more tender plants, like I do take out my tomatoes and like thicker stem brassicas and things like that. But like your peas, your marigolds, your lettuces, just snip them at the top, and it adds natural organic matter into your soil that the worms will degrade and they love it. Okay, so that's a really good thing to do at the end of the season.
I've been pulling everything out. Okay. So that could be a reason.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
makes it easier. It's less work.
Yes.
Okay, Steph said, should we do more or less compost depending on what is being grown in that specific raised bed? No, I don't think so. I spread the exact same amount of compost over everything. What I do is I like, let's say I have garlic right now in there and I'm gonna pull it in July. Garlic is a really heavy feeder. I will amend that area, like that strip of where that was, and I'll just rake in, especially if I usually add in like uh, lettuces or a lower feeding plant behind the garlic when I rotate. So it can kind of give that compost time to get in there and, do its thing. And then when I go to, sometimes I'll even do beans, which beans aren't super heavy feeders, but they will add nitrogen in. So I'll do them on the front end, like where I'm going to plant my garlic in the fall. Does that make sense? So some of the rotation can help, but I think I just in general add consistent amount of compost across everything every year. It was a long answer for a quick answer, actually.
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Anyone else?
Yes. Are you letting, hi, thanks so much for doing this. Are you letting, and I know I live in a very different place. I know about you because our friends live in Glen Arbor, but I live in Maui.
Oh.
And so we don't have winter, and it's very confusing for figuring out how long to rest like different beds. And, like, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, does it make sense to follow us like not necessarily the same calendar, but the same time frame of like, a farmer in Michigan would end up having 4 to 6, I have no idea how many months, basically, where different beds are resting before you're then maybe planting your beans before your garlic, or like, I guess that's one of the questions around soil and letting it rest and grow and build its little, own microbiome.
Yeah, I think rest can also be the type of plants that you're planting. There are plants that are going to take a lot more out of that soil and be really hard on it, and there are plants that aren't. And so I think it also matters, like by adding all that compost in, it does help the soil maintain that biome, even if you continue to grow in it. So, but you could trade out, like, if it's a cooler time for you. And I don't know enough about Maui, but I've only been to the area one time. But I do know because it's similar in climate somewhat to Texas. Like I think you guys are the same zone, and my whole husband's side of the family is in Texas. So I am down there a lot, and I have learned that they grow things year round, and they're constantly growing different things. But some of the tricks that they use are they have things that maybe add new things into the soil. So like beans, for instance, if we just clip them at the top, they add nitrogen back into the soil. And so there's ways that we can feed the soil while still growing. Or for instance, like radishes, they don't take anything really out of the soil. There's certain plants that just can let the soil rest because they're just not pulling out of it. Now, tomatoes, eggplants, potatoes, we could keep going there. They're really going to drain that soil. So you're not going to want to keep growing those same things in that spot, particularly if you're growing 4 seasons.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yes. Got another minute. Got time for one more question. If not, that is okay. I'm so glad you guys all showed up. The replay will come, and I said at the very beginning, in case you came at the end, we're going to give you guys a discount if you want to jump into the membership at all and take any of our courses. When you become a member, it's an all-access pass. So you can join any of the events. You can do anything in there. There's tons of downloads, and tons of times that I'm teaching in classes and videos. There's so much stuff. And so and if you don't see it, there's going to be a great answer from one of our community members. We have over 200 plus, and most of them are all over the United States. So it's really fun to see what everybody's doing and to grow alongside other people. So I hope you take a chance to jump in. Thanks so much, everybody, for attending. It's great to hear from you and to teach, as always. I'll see you guys next month.